is Wednesday. People First is the conversation. I'm your host, Terry Earthwind-Nichols. Welcome back for another discussion. This week, we're talking a little bit about leadership, the exploration of self. So what's that mean for you? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome and thanks for my colleagues, John and Linda and Jenny, for being here again. And I'm going to let Linda start this off this round because this is a take out of one of our books that we co-wrote together. So Linda, won't you hop in and let's see what we do.
Absolutely. If you guys can see this, but it's evolve yourself and your business. Everything is a choice. And people don't always believe that. Everything is a choice. So what the little blurb that we had out on the ad was from the book. And it is the way I move through the world. I had a coaching session done. What was it called? I can't even think the type of coaching it was. And it came out like, I move through the world via trust. And it's like, yes, that's like so true. And that's how I, just how I even filter things, is this situation something I can trust? Is this person someone I can trust? And the other thing when it comes to trust is if you can't trust your birth family, that's okay. You can create a new family. So that's something that I like to talk about as well. Did you have something else there, Terry?
Well, I'm well known. Some of you folks listening in today may not know that I teach about you cannot give what you do not have. So having self and self-love, and understanding you are you, and it's just about being present in the world and that kind of thing. So that when you talk to people or you do things for people or anything like that, you're sending that self-love out to people. And then you replicate it to a number of other people who then send it back to you. And then that's where the adage comes from. Whatever you send out comes back in multitudes. And that's really what it's all about. People, if you're doing good things out in this world, people talk about you. And when they talk about you, the people they're talking to want to know about you. And here it comes right back in here. And our book is really kind of two-faceted. It's about dealing with the trust and how to create relationships and build on trust, and both for a new company getting started and somebody that's out there who's been around for a while, who's looking at themselves and saying, you know what, I think it's time for a rebirth of my brand, of my message. I'm not really doing what my website of 6 years ago says I'm doing. And it's just time to just move forward in that regard. And from that, new things are built. And you draw in new people because your message changes, the type of person that you want to exemplify and bring to you consciously and subconsciously come to the fore. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about leadership today and the exploration of self. And I'm going to pass this down, not necessarily down, but way east of me to Sweden, to Jenny Landgren. Jenny, hum in.
Thank you, Terry. So the exploration of self. What comes to mind for me is that I did not always feel safe to explore myself. I was not always surrounded by people who loved on me, held that space for me, were understanding and compassionate with the things that came up for me to discover. Like we go through life and we have these experiences and we make choices, like Linda says, and then we get to evaluate. And when that time comes for us to pause and look at our choices and look at ourselves in the direction that we're heading, it takes a lot of love, as you say, Terry, and compassion and understanding, and just being out of judgment to fully see, be ready to accept and see everything, to gain that sense of clarity, to take the next step, to grow through, to discover another layer. And I can see times in my life where that became even more of a conscious choice as to who I was surrounding myself with and who I was turning to and what kind of attitude I was showing up with towards myself. And I love that the post prior to this was on trust. And what came up for me was that in the times in my life where I did not inspire trust to others or for others, I was really struggling in trusting myself. We do get to show up for ourselves to be able to show up for others. And that's within my power. That's within my sphere of control. That's something that I can, that I can deal with, that I can choose to look at and see how can I build my self-trust, my self-confidence, and so many ways to take this. Thank you for thank you for checking in, Terry.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Because a lot of your business working with chief executives as a behavioral scientist, trust is everything. It takes a long time to build up the trust with somebody and seconds to destroy it, and sometimes forever. You hear that all the time, ladies and gentlemen, and it never gets old because it's so basic. It's so truthful. This world right now more than ever is fighting with this liar, fake news, all of that kind of stuff. United States is full of it. United Kingdom's got some scandals going. There's scandals everywhere. All right. And we as conscious people get to start setting an example for our children, because that's the ones who count. All right. Old people like me, we're going to pass on pretty quick. However, we do have a wealth of trust, of knowledge that the next two generations can take with them and grow with, so that they create a world that's worth saving. Right now, a lot of people are not sure they want to save this world because, why do I want to save these wars and all that kind of stuff? Here's what's going on. Children who growing up seeing this and knowing the lies and all of that because of, you bet, cell phones and the internet, they get the truth in real time. And that's going to change. And that's exciting. Linda, you got a pull on that?
Actually, I'd love to hear from John.
Well, thank you. I was still trying to remember what Terry was talking about, the old people passing away. I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll just wander away from here. It's just, I do agree that, I'd be really happy when people who exemplify a lot of the negativity that I really am upset about. I was making a post this morning about being embarrassed by many, many boomers who have really sort of changed dramatically over time. I mean, when it was the 60s and I was in college and in the 70s when I first started in business, things were much more open and caring. If you listen to the music of the time, if you listen to the culture of the time, it was a much more vibrant and welcoming kind of time frame. And And I think really and truly, it's just like everything else that we do. You know, we try and step ourselves out onto this limb, and then we get out almost to where we want to be, and then we become afraid, and we come back to where we have always been before. What's that line that they had in The Sopranos? Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in, kind of thing. And I think that's what happens. You know, we want to trust, we want to be loving, we want to be fearless, we want to do all these things that will really move us forward. And what happens is we try this, and it's not comfortable. I mean, if you've never done this before, it's really uncomfortable, and we have to practice the uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable. Like you were talking about, Terry, this idea of, you know, just, I mean, you and I both do this. I mean, we do a lot of giving of work and time and energy to others, and I don't do it with any expectation of return on that investment. I figure I want to behave the way I want to behave because that's the person I want to be, not because if I'm nice to you, you'll be nice back. Because what that creates is resentment. You know, I was nice to you, but you weren't nice back to me. So, you know, what you have to do is give without an expectation of receipt. And then you begin to get some of the things you were talking about, this return of an investment on your time and your energy. But I don't know where it may come from. And maybe, you know, kind and mentoring over here, and then all of a sudden somebody comes over from out the middle of nowhere. And so it's just a matter of realizing that we want to change what we're trying to move towards. Because right before we started here, Jenny said, we'll save that for when we get on the air. And I said, because trust is the final step. It isn't the first step. You know, the first step is being accountable. The first step is welcoming conflict and listening to other components and other people's perspectives. And then acknowledging them, accepting them, which doesn't mean agreeing with them. It just means accepting and be welcoming of other people's perspectives. And all of a sudden, you begin to be the person that people come to. You begin to be the person that people listen to because you have a level of equanimity that you don't find in everybody. So the idea of being trusting is something that's excellent. The problem is that it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time, and it takes the willingness to be uncomfortable until you become more comfortable with behavior you've simply never tried to use before.
Can I?
Go ahead, Jenny. Yeah.
Thank you. What's coming up for me is a phrase that I've been told that I often tell my clients. I don't always remember what I say, but it is trust the process. It's trust the process, like trust the co-creation, trust that it's not a huge shift from one day to another. It's baby steps, and it's being clear-minded in that decision, evaluating in that decision. And I love that you bring up, John, that we enter the world, and most of us, and I'm not going to say all of us because I know that there's a lot of room for healing in our world, but most of us have the intention to connect, to find that sense of belonging in a way that inspires trust. And when we open up and when we go out into the world, we are probably looking for red flags. We're looking for people's behavior and how they respond to us. That's a wise thing to do, you know? What we get to recognize is that red flags are also in our own behavior. It's in the compromises that we make in relationships. And that's so interesting. Back to what I was saying on self-trust, that regardless of how people show up, we can stay true, and we can stay loving, to be honest with ourselves, to recognize those red flags and make those decisions that serve us and that are in serving the people around us. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm loving this. I think Linda could agree that when we're working, especially when she's coaching her book in 30 days clients, you know, there's a lot of this that that trust that she sends out, that she can be trusted with the very inner thoughts of this book that's about to go into print on this person. And it's a wish that is now becoming true. Trust is everything. Linda, can you pick in on that?
Yes, that's probably why my book in 30 days approach is so successful, is that we do work from the level of the soul. Because if we weren't, then we'd be dealing with ego, and it's ego that doesn't trust. So the soul is just here to experience the experience, and trust doesn't have anything to do with it. So it just knows. It's all knowing. So if somebody can't be trusted, it's like done deal. Next. So yeah, that's interesting. Thanks for bringing that up, sweetie.
I'm
Terry,
the sweetie and the host. Go ahead.
It came up for me when Jenny was sharing, and it's sort of the family in which I grew up in and the business in which I started working in. You have to learn that everyone can be a teacher. Everyone can be a teacher. And what I learned from my family was how not to be a parent. You know, you can learn how not to be a father and how not to be a mother, and then use those experiences to behave in a different way. It's the same way when I first started in business. I worked for somebody who was not trustworthy, and it taught me how to be trustworthy by looking at this person and then simply doing the opposite. It's not that hard. If you're around people who make you feel uncomfortable, learn what it is that's making you uncomfortable and then do something differently. The other thing is that if we're working with other people, and most of us work with other people, it's very hard to just simply sit in a room by ourselves and crank out work. But we have no control over what's going on outside of us. The only thing we have on what's outside of us is influence. Okay. And if we are not emotionally balanced, if we're not emotionally in control, if we don't have a sense of self and self-value, then we will never reach a point of emotional control. And therefore, we will have almost no influence in the world and the people that we come in contact with. So the first thing I always try to teach people is that this is where we need to work. If we want to fix what's going on out here, this is what we need to work on. This gets better. This gets better. Every time. And it's like what Jenny was saying, trust the process, because they're like, well, it's not all fixed yet. It's like, no, no, it's not all fixed yet. And I've been working at it for 25 years. And is it all fixed? No. I mean, if you think I'm like wandering around like Gandhi, just ask my kids. They'll tell you that's not the case. So, we all get better at different rates. We all get smarter at different rates. So it's like Jenny said, trust the process. I know if you do these things, pray, meditate, mindfulness, get yourself set, create a path for your heart and your mind to follow. If you create a path for your mind and your heart to follow every day, your life will follow it.
Man, I am loving this conversation. Something that came to mind in the recent past, very recently, I had a conversation with someone who had lost the trust of their business partner, lost the trust. It's not earth ending, it's not game ending, it's not business ending, but it is start with self and really reflect and really spend some time with your business partner and really deep dive into what happened, what caused you to make the decisions you did. Was it business related? Was it selfish? Was it driven by an argument with a spouse? What was it? And can you save it? Because without trust, the leadership, the company will fail. Okay, that's a given. Marriages fail, everything fails when trust goes away. And we as leaders, we get to think about that. People who respect you and trust your sense of self and for the company, they'll work hard for you. They'll show up every day. They're happier. They're healthier because they are happier. They are healthier. And seems that personal issues that normally float around people who are disconnected stop getting so much of that because they're connected to something to hold on to. And it's like on the ride of a roller coaster. You're going to grab on to the bar or whatever you're going to do so that you have something for yourself. And I think leadership without trust is not leadership. It's just chaos, mayhem, and failure is to come. Failure is to come. You can't keep people if you're not an honest and ethical person. You just can't keep, you can't pay them enough because they're embarrassed to go anywhere because somebody is going to say, oh, you work at XYZ. Why do you do that? You're a good person. Why do you work for those bad people? What are you going to say? Pretty soon you leave them. Jenny, you had something?
Yes, well, we see in business development that especially in times of change, it becomes very clear what level of trust is already invested in the leadership, and how important it is to, when times are easy, to show up still with the intention of caring for your people. And when we say trust, what is that really? Like, trust what? For me, it's about trusting the intentions of the other person. And I know in my life that there are many different intentions behind people's behavior. And like we say, we can talk with intent to, or we can listen with intent to understand or to respond. Like there's that, is there this intent to connect, to listen and take in what also is good for me and what also serves me? Am I a part of this equation? Or is this person looking out for him, herself? And to recognize that the times that are easy are the best times to have those one-on-one conversations. That's building that connection. And connection is gold. It's the gold in your investment portfolio. It's what's going to take you through the hard times.
Yeah, and that whole thing about disconnection, you know, like it's connected to intention, like, and trust is like, whew, we got a 3 thing going here. So when we find ourselves all of a sudden disconnected from somebody, like you kind of like lost each other, usually it's a misunderstanding of intention or what you're filtering through to understand the other person. And it might even just be something going on in their life. And John's so good about sharing what's going on in his life before we start working on something. And that just gives a really clear filter for any of John's like responses or questions or whatever. That helps me to understand him, stay connected with him. So, and somebody else evidently needed some connection today because she was growling from the back of the chair. She was poking out like, you will hold me now.
Chief of Security. Yeah, Chief of Security. That's Princess Grace there. And when she wants action, it's going to happen. So as it turns out, we've where we live here, right outside, they've been the landscapers and everybody's been out there all morning long, and we're just praying that that they're going to be done and gone to the next area before we come on our live, or we just have to deal with that in the background. You know, something else brought mind that Jenny said, and that's intention and intent, right? You know, if you hear of somebody doing something that's not trustworthy or not ethical or whatever, and the person who's doing it is somebody you trust and know quite well, you're probably more likely to want to go to that person and say, is this true? This is so not you. Is this true? What happened? Is there something, you know, that you misspoke? What? I don't get this, because this is not something that I would have ever seen from you. You give them the benefit of the doubt because it has taken so long for a person, particularly if you had a bad childhood. You don't trust anybody, okay? And that's just the way it goes. So when that trust is taken away, that shakes your world up. Okay, I can remember a couple of instances back in earlier on in my life where somebody that I knew very well and trusted, I looked up to them. I had very high respect for them, only to find out that they had another dark side that was not so good. And when I found out about it, one in particular got caught and was sent to jail. It rocked my world. I didn't trust anybody for quite a while after that, because I had a rocky childhood, and I was able to walk away from all of that. And mindset is a lot of it. You know, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are listening live and the recording, you know, if you want to change your life, go find people who are in the lifestyle and work in that energy that you want to change your life to, because you will take on the vibration of those that you seek out, and you start becoming that person. You start leaving that life that you no longer desire. And this is not woo-woo. This is really behavioral science, and Jenny might be able to jump in on that. But you know, it's like two tuning forks. You click one and it's vibrating. You don't do anything to the other, and all of a sudden both of them are vibrating together. That's the like vibration and the sound waves enjoined the two vibrations together. We're about to the end here right now. I'm going to ask John if you've got some final thoughts here as we kind of wrap it up today.
I think I've kind of said all I needed to say today. The key is in being trusting, or to be trusted, is to be trustworthy. And for me, that's, you know, I don't want anybody to look at me and go, did you really do that? And the funny thing is that it's once I started doing this, I don't know, 20 years ago, since then, I've not ever had anybody have to say that to me. I've not ever had anybody have to walk up to me and challenge me for something that I've said or done that was off color, or was, you know, a dark side that I was trying to cover up, or all that stuff. When you give those things up, you'd be amazed how freeing it can be, and how much trust you can generate simply by changing the way in which you think and feel.
Good point. Good point. I'm going to slip in here and ask my partner and love of my life what her final thoughts are today. Linda?
Yeah, I'm with John. I'm good. It really, the bottom line though, in the title of the book, Evolve Yourself and Your Business, is, you know, leadership is an exploration of self, and the first place to begin. And I would say that the biggest thing I've noticed, just being in the coaching world, is there's such a huge difference between clients who have stepped out of corporate or a part of corporate, and people who are solo entrepreneurs. I don't usually work with beginners. However, it's really interesting to see how corporate hasn't really pushed the development of self. And as an entrepreneur, it is the only way to survive. So you do a lot of self-development, or you won't even have clients. You don't even have the ability for client attraction. So that's a huge thing that I've noticed. And so I'm excited to see that leaders are looking to evolve themselves so that they have the greatest impact and the ease and flow of getting along with their team, and their team's getting along because they're encouraging self-development amongst their team. So their teams. Thanks.
And off to Jenny Landgren, ladies and gentlemen. Any final thoughts?
Yes, great discussion today. Thank you, everyone. Another word that's coming in from me is transparency on this very topic. And it's coming up in regards of my children, because I do want for them to live lives where they are fully confident, trusting themselves, trusting their inner knowing, trusting themselves to be able to build relationships and go out and do, the good that they are gifted to do in this world. And for me, it's so much about my own transparency on my own journey. Our children will treat themselves not as we tell them to, but as we in terms are treating ourselves and showing up for ourselves as parents. So just on a healthy level, of course, but there's a level of transparency in my own thought process. Decisions don't always just come out of the blue. It's a co-creation, and they get to share their thoughts and their experiences along the way and get to know themselves also in the process. Yes, love this topic. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that, Jenny. And when it comes to kids, it's very easy to get disconnected with our children. And sometimes they really send us some strong messages that that's happened, and we get a lot of negative behavior. And so instead of focusing on the behavior, realize the behavior is a message, and sit down and, have that quiet time together, have something enjoyable. It doesn't mean you have to just go into like this punishment mode or something. If your kids are acting up, there's something that's not right for them in their world. I know John has a great story about his son and how, he was getting two different emotions that mixed up, and that was such a great reminder story that, like, our kids, their minds, their brains don't even develop until like age 25. If there's ADD or ADHD, then developmentally they're about a third of their chronological age. So when you have like an 18-year-old and you're like thinking you're ready to send this child off into the world, if there's any like ADD, ADHD, you're actually sending a 12-year-old out into the world. So yeah, lots of things to think about. Thanks for coming, everybody.
I'll end this as your host to today's wonderful discussion. Thanks, my friends and colleagues. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening in, both live and those of you who will pick up the recording of our series. We've got about 4 more to go, I think, 4 or 5 more in this series. So we're not going away anytime soon. Thanks again for stopping.